This is a topic I've wanted to cover for a while. I have hot takes about default font sizes, especially for blogs, and they've gotten me in some heat in the past. Thankfully, someone else, in this case, Adrian Rosalie, wrote a blog post about the ultimate ideal bestest base font size that everyone is keeping a secret, especially Chet. This is fun. I already saw a great chat from Aiden that the right size is 13 pixels just to piss everyone off, and honestly, since no one's going to be happy, you might as well piss them all off. Regardless, I want to see what they have to say. Link in the description if you want to take a look at this post yourself. Updated April 3rd, 2024. Originally posted on March 13th. It's none. Ooh boy. We're already starting spicy. Clarification. Let me clarify. Don't set a base font size. Body, font size. Yeah, no. Got a linter or code checker or boss man hassling you that you need to set something? Okay. Use something like this. Font size 100%? Oh boy. Where are we going with this one? Because this approach has the advantage of always inheriting the user's preferred font size, the one that they choose in the browser or on their system, even if they did not explicitly choose one because the default was maybe good enough. All other font sizes, headings, navigation, footer, etc., should then use relative units. Here's where we're getting even bolder, but I think I like where this is going so far. Ideally, without being smaller than the default font size, with very specific exceptions. Because you're avoiding calculation witchcraft, any smaller sizes could be easier for authors to spot, like 0.9 REM and 90% are clearly smaller. That's a very fair point with the readability too. I'm still iffy so far because so few users change their default font size. In fact, I haven't, but I might even change it by the end of this blog post. We'll see as we go. I'm curious about this calculation witchcraft. What are they linking here? What does font size 62.5% do? What? Why? Where did they find this? Oh, that is so cursed. So the reason for 62.5 is that the default font size in browsers is usually 16 pixels, which is honestly my preferred size. And the 62.5% converts the default to 10, which means that rem values are suddenly always 10 pixels. So it makes the math much easier. I hate that so much. I hate that so much. And witchcraft is a great thing to call that. Aiden in chat saying, don't look at any of his sites. Don't worry, I won't. Jesus. Okay. So, alternatively, font sizes based on viewport units bring risk, not the least of which is preventing the user from scaling it large enough to read. Then you need yet more calculation sorcery to prevent it. Oh boy, I have to read into these. Addressing accessibility concerns when using fluid type. The clamp function is often paired with viewport units for fluid. Yada yada. This technique is several voices warn that it opens up situations where text can fail WCAG success criteria, which specifies that text should scale up to at least 200% when the user's browser reaches its 500% maximum zoom level. That looks at least twice the size. As someone who regularly zooms in pages, I appreciate the effort to make sure that is a thing. I often, even not just for like reading for content or reading on my own, I'll regularly command plus something like to 200 to 300% just to get like a really well formatted screenshot for a thumbnail and things like that. So I've command plus minus a lot in order to do this type of thing. But the idea that certain hacks people are doing are preventing you from scaling your text size up enough is not only real, it's something I experience a lot when I'm trying to do those thumbnails. I hadn't really thought of it as an accessibility issue before, and I'm really thankful I did. And the other link was to another Adrian post, responsive type and zoom. So this one was posted in 2019, but they've been updating it since. This is a very detailed blog post that I'm actually really interested in. If you guys are curious about the full responsive type and zoom post, let me know in the comments and I'll consider doing the full video about that as well. Back here though. So let's see what other recommendations they have. Forms. While you're tearing out an unnecessary base font size declaration, maybe add this to your CSS to honor the user's preferences in forms as well. Ooh, interesting. And again, they have 2 additional blog posts that I'm actually really excited about. As soon as I saw that there was an under-engineered text box, I had to read this part too. This is the latest and not last in my informal series of posts on under-engineered controls. I love this idea. The idea of the minimal necessary pieces to style things, which they call out here. Generally, I'm looking for the minimum amount of CSS necessary to style native HTML controls while also retaining or improving accessibility and honoring different user preferences. This part in particular, the user preferences seems to be a focus, and I really like that. Last month, I tweeted a bit of CSS to make the default browser text boxes of HTML, text area, and inputs less awful looking, which, yeah, they're pretty awful. If I just hop in CodePen and I have input type equals text. Oh, we don't like self-closing tags now. This sucks. This is like the wrong size. It's like way too small. The like highlight behavior is bad. The spacing and everything, just it doesn't match the rest of the page, especially if we have CSS and rules set for like the font and everything. Input just gets ignored. But if we add this CSS, now it's actually using the preferences for the site, which already looks better, especially if we had other text outside. Hi, div, testing. Like these contrast less than if I delete this. Now these look entirely different. Now they look much more matching. Good call out. I hate the default styles for these things. There's also a bunch of fun catches with inputs. Like one that I saw in the Lee Rob Iceberg post was that if you have a base font size, I think it's 12, it might be 14 for an input, and you touch it on an iPhone, it will zoom in Safari. If it's 14 or over, then it will leave you at your current zoom level. So there's a specific pixel size for your text in an input that changes how Safari behaves when you start typing in that input, which is just wild to me. So here's the basic styles they recommend. Font. The font property will inherit all the styles from the containers. Some CSS resets will double up and use font size, but that's not necessary. Font will bring in the styles for each of font size, font family, font style, font variant, font weight, font stretch, and font height when it's set. It also brings in line height. This is useful. All the things that you've set for your site get carried through when you do font inherit. I didn't actually know that. It's really good to know. Let's combine this actually with the recommendations in this other post, specifically the HTML font size here. Input type equals text, div, hello, div. Yeah, now it's actually using the like right font size. If I delete that, will I get differently sized? No, probably because of my browser size. Cool, font size, medium recommended. I'm changing this because I want this changed. I've wanted it changed for a while. So now I bumped that up to large. And now it's bigger. If I remove it, it stays bigger. But if I had set this to like 14px or something, like many do, then that won't actually get changed when I change the browser setting. Which honestly, I'm going to leave this on large because I know it's going to break things and I want to see what it breaks, but also because I prefer to have my font a bit bigger. I know, crazy, I'm a boomer, especially because I use the small screen, but I actually quite like that. And of course, it made this blog post's font a little bit bigger as well. Letter spacing. If a user or author adjusts the text to provide more space between letters, the default field is not affected. Inherently, the font style does not bring letter spacing styles along with it, so you need to inherit the letter spacing as well. If you otherwise take steps on your page to support the WCAG success criteria with text spacing, including a handy testing bookmarklet. If you're not familiar with a bookmarklet, it's a little bit of JavaScript that you can run by clicking a little bookmark that will do something with JS in your console on the page you're on. So it seems like someone here made a bookmarklet that will apply styles to a page that handle some of these rules. Like line height has to be at least 1.5 times the font size, spacing following paragraphs to be at least 2 times font size, letter spacing 0.12. This seems really helpful. And this lets you make sure that your pages are actually following these rules. Really handy links. These blog posts are phenomenal so far. What's crazy is that this letter spacing thing is not included in any of the CSS resets that they've found. Very interesting. I would think this should just be in all of them, and I'm amazed this isn't in every reset. I'm learning some good shit already. Also, word spacing is not inherited as part of font. That's kind of insane that letter spacing and word spacing aren't inherited when you do font inherit, even though like line height is, font stretch is, obviously all the things that start with font are, but for line height to be honored here and then letter spacing to not be, that feels weird to me. I would argue letter spacing is more the font's problem than line height is in a lot of ways. CSS be CSS. Word spacing is weird. What about line height? Note that I do not set line height. It cascades from font in all the browsers that they've tested. If you find a case where it does not, likely due to explicitly setting line height or more specific styles, then I suggest adding line height inherent to satisfy the WCAG standards. And here's an example from CodePen. Let's take a look. So here we have assorted fields, and then we have one where we actually space the text because somebody has increased text spacing for things like dyslexia or other issues that make it harder to read. Really handy to have that handled for you. And all they did for the spaced text, I'm assuming, is put a label accordingly. Yeah, field set, legend, spaced text. Okay, so field set nth child. So this is the second one because we have these two field sets. So the second one has a line height of 1.8, letter spacing that is different from the default, word spacing that is different from the default, and it increased font size. And it all just works because we did that reset above. Let's see what they have to say about this. Nothing. They're just showcasing it. Cool. Yeah, it just works. Really handy that all your inputs just look correct when you make these small changes. And if you apply styles on top, they get honored. Don't stop here. you can potentially make text fields even more usable and accessible for your users with a few additional styles tweaked from your own design. You can read a high-level overview of what to consider in their post, Basic Custom Control Requirements. Why are all of these so tempting? This blog is incredible. I seriously, I know I say this in all of my videos where I'm reading somebody's blog posts, but everything I've seen on Adrian's blog has made me want to go film 3 videos. Another one, don't disable form controls. This is something that I've wanted to talk about for a while because it's so common that people disable things on forms or buttons and stuff like that. Ugh. Yeah, it's okay to disable buttons. And oh God, no, don't tell me. This is the go-to accessibility, don't do this thing. Oh boy, yeah. Let me know in the comments if I should do this video as well because I'm not going to be sidetracked again right now. Whew, this is too good. And here's a version of the same styles as above, but with a couple more things added in a different selector. Interesting, they're filtering out checkboxes, files, and a few other input types, and then applying these defaults. Good stuff. The selector. Everyone's favorite part of CSS. The most complex part of this entire block is probably the selector. As I mentioned above, there's more fields than input type text that can accept text. Generally, we want to capture them all, with some exceptions. For example, we don't want to overlap or override styles that we've set in our under-engineered custom radio buttons and checkbox. Again, let me know if that should be a video too. There's so much good stuff here. We have no need to style an image input since the image itself will do all the work of styling. File inputs and range inputs have default layouts across browsers that are more complex than just a box, so adding a border to them might be a bit much. Wow, even not supported in Internet Explorer 9. I didn't know that. There's so many little nuggets here. I make no effort to style the data list because there is no reason to. The default styles are fine. Trying to manipulate them is more complex than warranted. And then you have all of the WCAG standard considerations for moving away from user agent default styles. Whew, spitting fire. They have a bunch of additional styles here that they recommend, mostly resetting things, adding borders, handling read-only states, error states. This is all phenomenal, and I highly recommend you check this blog post out if you want to learn more. Even high contrast mode stuff, which you guys don't know anything about me. I love my high contrast modes. I'm a little colorblind and also really dumb, so it's nice having these things. This is phenomenal, yeah. Even print styles, if you're printing the page, making sure it looks good when you do that. Whew. Custom dark mode styles, everything you need to do this right. You do a lot with native HTML text fields using just a little CSS. When you do style your own fields, look to the minimum styles you need to make them fit with your overall design and still support the cases I outlined above. You don't need to do them all, but I recommend that you at least consider and test your options. Phenomenal. I totally agree. And yeah, if this person knows that much about doing this right, then maybe, just maybe, I need to make some changes. Print styles. When it comes to print styles, the text may be too large for your audience, regardless of if or how you set it. If so, you can set the base font in the appropriate point size, and all your other relative font sizes will work from there. So if you're using media print, because you did Command P to print the page, this makes sure the font size is right. Good call out too. Recap. That's it. That's a secret. Don't set a base font size. But sure, your case is special. Your case is more important than respecting user choice. I'm not your dad. I can't stop you legally. Ooh boy. One of the commenters on the blog post pointed out that setting your font size on body doesn't affect rem, but setting it on HTML does, and posts 2 examples so that we're sure that we'll actually put this on the HTML instead of the body element, which resulted in the author making that change. Really good call out. One thing that's pretty important to call out is for those of us who are on Tailwind, a lot of these things are already solved. Their default reset is really good. They have the style sheet here. It does a lot. It's a pretty comprehensive reset that fixes things like weird margins on shit, weird padding on things where it shouldn't be. It's a really good reset overall. It doesn't include everything we just touched on, but it includes a lot of it. Where font size is always inherited, small is font size 80, sup and sub are font size 75%. It looks like every font size call here is just done with percentages. So it looks like they're actually following all these rules, except for 1EM, which once you've set the 100%, makes sense. So it's cool to see Tailwind's already on top of these things. I'll be honest, this article convinced me, and I was going to show you guys me changing the docs that we have for upload thing, which if you're not familiar is the best way to do file uploads in Next. I was going to go quickly change this to use a default font size of 100%. And I realized when I looked at the element that the font size that it has is 17 pixels. And when I saw where that's coming from, it's coming from Nextra Body Typesetting article, which I went and searched in their repo and quickly found that they're setting custom pixel font sizes all over this code base. 0.9 EM, 34 pixels, Font size is 90, the string. This is the one that I was bothered by, which is font size is 17 pixels. So I could go through and refactor all of this, but I am not going to do that. So yeah, hopefully next V3 will follow these much better, more sane rules with doing this. And I will certainly be using font size 100% whenever I'm the one making these decisions in the future. As I showed earlier, this is how Tailwind mostly does things internally. And more, I think font sizes should probably be percentages rather than pixel values. So once again, huge shout out to Adrian for blackpilling me on this. I was unsure going in, and I have come out 100% on board. Font sizes should be percentages, not pixel numbers. And I'm saying this as somebody who prefers 18 pixels as the base reading font. So yeah, I lean big. Whichever way you lean, seems like percentages are the way to go. Let me know if you disagree in the comments, and definitely tell me if I should react to more of Adrian's posts, because this was phenomenal. Until next time, peace nerds.